This is a Your Voice, Your Future Town Hall. Crisis in the Classroom.
Baltimore is a city that has been plagued by violence and poverty. It's easy to criticize the individuals who commit crimes and who lack the skills to make a meaningful livelihood. But we must go deeper. We must examine why they have resorted to crime and why they cannot hold down a consistent job. As you will see, the actual party to blame is the school administrators who fail to offer the students in their schools a quality education. We all know that without a quality education, it is practically impossible to live a fulfilling life. Yet, these administrators have stuffed their wallets at the cost of the children and their communities. I'm Armstrong Williams. Parental choices is making headlines in Maryland again. During the pandemic, some parents said they wanted the choice about if and when their kids wore masks in school. Now, some counties are seeing debates about the topic of gender identity instruction in the classroom. Amy Simpson has a closer look at those debates.
Holding signs this morning.
Honk your horn! Woo!
A small group gathered outside of the State Board of Ed meeting in Baltimore.
Maryland's Department of Education approved a framework that includes gender identity and expression and over-sexualized material starting from kindergarten.
This Frederick County mom of 3 says her youngest is set to start kindergarten in the fall.
My daughter doesn't think about this kind of stuff. She plays with everybody, and I don't want to put stuff into these young children's heads that's not there.
According to the state's comprehensive health education framework, gender identity curriculum standards for kindergartners includes just 2 things: recognizing a range of ways people identify and express their gender, and recognize it's important to treat people of all gender identities and expressions with dignity and respect. This health curriculum also includes a standard of kindergartners being able to identify different types of families, like single parent, same gender, adoptive, foster, etc.
Throughout, quarantine and everything like that, a lot of parents realized they didn't have a lot of say in anything that was going on with their children. And when this came up, the outpouring of parents that are just no, we can't just sit by and allow these things to happen.
Usually it's very few parents showing up for a variety of these things.
Political analyst John Deedy says the pandemic forced school board meetings online and more parents started participating.
Meetings they would have never driven to before because it would have taken time out of their day. Suddenly, it created a more active parent environment.
But he also says,
education is designed to expose people to new ideas.
It's now 2022, and social issues evolve.
When I was in high school in the dark ages of the 70s, you know what we had in our school? A place called the Smoking Lounge, where kids could go to between classes and smoke a couple cigarettes, and even during study hall.
Noting the debate over what schools should teach versus what's left to the parents has been an argument for decades.
And society and cultural changes for parents can be sometimes overwhelming. And I think that they want more of a handle on them in their own home environment, and they want the schools to basically deal with the 3 R's of reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Tiffany Noble joins us now. She is running for Frederick County School Board. Ms. Noble, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So what has gotten so bad with the Frederick County School Board that you had to make a serious determination to run?
I definitely didn't expect to run. I didn't expect to be in politics at all. During COVID, we had a lot of issues with what was being taught to, I have a senior, a freshman, and a 3rd grader. And what I was seeing on their Zoom was, it was just troubling. And it was hard to get information from the board. It's hard to get anything out of anybody. So I decided that I needed to run. I started out with the masks, but ended up being, with transparency, trying to get things dealt with.
You seem very distressed now, even thinking about it. What was it that you were seeing that really troubled you, that parents should really be aware of?
Well, there were the highly sexualized material that was going on in the health curriculum, a lot of the math that was going on. It's definitely something that needs to be paid attention to, because they're not keeping the parents informed, and they're not listening during the meetings.
How do they justify this highly sexualized movement of your kids and kids across the country? What is the justification, and why do they not feel that parents should at least have some say-so in this if their children's going to be exposed to it?
You're absolutely right. It's frustrating that the things that they're saying, it's all about making sure that the LGBTQ community is taken care of and not bullied, and that's not what this curriculum is doing. The bullying needs to be addressed, but the curriculum isn't going to help that.
What about all of a sudden we're seeing in our culture, Tiffany, the minority has the power over the majority? It's something that is very strange that's not just happening in Frederick County, but all across the country. It seems as though there are some private there are organizations that support them. They get it to the forefront. It's well funded, it's well orchestrated, well publicized, and to make them feel as though they're disenfranchised at the expense of culture and the best learning environment for your kid.
Yeah, it's frustrating for a lot of parents. I mean, we don't want to see anybody bullied for any reason, but yeah, it's not helping all kids, and that's not. It needs to be addressed, but it's not. They're not going about it the correct way.
You know, the important point I think for all parents is, how is it now, if you are elected, how can you change this and make it better for all parents?
Well, transparency is huge. Making sure everybody knows what's going on, having more dialogue during BOE meetings, making sure, I don't think the health curriculum that they're trying to bring in needs to be in there at all. And there needs to be an opt-in option, not an opt-out option. And right now it's all up in the air. We need to make sure that parents are a part of the conversation during the BOE meetings. And right now we can talk, but that's about it. We talk and they completely ignore us.
And finally, in the minute we have left, what is it that your kid had to say about all this?
My kids, they're proud of me. They're finally glad that somebody's doing something about it. They didn't expect it to be me, but now that I'm in the race, it's pretty exciting for all of them.
Are you ready for the challenge?
I am. I didn't plan to go into it, but I'm ready to make things better for my kids, for all kids.
Well, Tiffany Noble, I'm certain that all parents appreciate the fact that you care and you want to make a difference. And also thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. If anybody can help out, my website is tiffanynoblefcboe.com. If you can go there and make a donation, we're fighting against the people backed by unions and the big money. So we need the help.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We want to welcome our panel now. April Montgomery, who's also in the package, is a Frederick County School Board candidate, and Marisa Perez-Diaz is with the Texas State Board of Education. She joins us live via Zoom. You know, one of the things that was just pointed out, Ms. Montgomery, was transparency. It seems to be a simple formula. If you want to teach something to our kids, make the parents aware, get them involved, and if it's something that is secret and you don't want the parents to know, then that becomes very troubling for a parent and for the school overall. Why would they not want the parent involved in the process?
You ask a good question. I mean, I don't think that it is. I think a lack of transparency is a serious issue for everybody. Making sure that we have transparency helps to build that trust between teachers and parents that is seriously lacking right now, which leads to what? It leads to parents not believing in the process. It leads to parents not having respect for the teachers, which then inevitably leads to students not having respect for the teachers. And that's not fair, because a lot of this stuff coming down the curriculum, it is not coming from the teachers, it is coming from the state, it is coming from curriculum writers, it is coming through many different facets, and the teachers are kind of like the servers at a restaurant, right? They're the face. They are there with the kids. They are in the trenches, and they do not deserve to be treated with disrespect. However, when there's that lack of transparency, you get that lack of trust. We've seen it in Frederick County big time, to the point where they are taking power away from the board and giving it to committees that are made up of students and community members that are approving curriculum, they're approving materials, they're approving lots of things. And for parents, this is very frustrating because those meetings are not televised.
Ms. Perez-Diaz, I know you're the youngest person who happened to be Latino ever elected in the state of Texas to the school board. You've advocated successfully, including an African-American curriculum, a Mexican-American curriculum, and now they're talking about a health curriculum. Does this in some way marginalize and further divide and segregate the kids, or is this necessary? Or do you have to satisfy every special interest group when a problem arises and someone cries, I'm being marginalized and I'm not represented?
Well, I'll start by saying, again, thank you for having me on again, Armstrong. It's a pleasure to be back with you. So this isn't about pandering to any kind of special interest group. This is specifically about meeting the needs of our students in the classrooms. And so any policymaker in a position that has a platform, in a position of power that is supposed to be creating policy for our students, if they're not centering students' needs, then that's a problem. And if you're prioritizing special interests over that, then that's a problem. So it's interesting, a couple of things that I'd heard just now, I think that there was some irony, I think, in what Miss April, I think, said just a little while ago. She asked for campaign donations because she's trying to beat the unions and people with big money. And historically,
you're speaking of Tiffany Noble.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tiffany Noble. Yes,
okay.
I'm sorry, Miss April. You're the one that we're on with me now. And so what's interesting to me is just the dichotomy, because typically those two organizations have been on opposite ends, and so there's some sort of, for me, there's some sort of similarity in terms of what we're trying to accomplish, and that ultimately is making sure that our young people in schools don't feel like they don't have a place in the classroom. At the end of the day, this is not. And I very much appreciate family voice, and I very much appreciate student voice. I think, April, what you spoke to right now about committees that are built on community members and students, that's the way we should be helping to democratize decision-making, because the policies that we're making at the state level directly impact how our students are growing and learning. And so this is important. And I can tell you, I have learned so much in listening to our young people. Unfortunately, what happens sometimes is that the adults in the process, for fear of the unknown or whatever the pushback may be, tend to get in the way of what students truly want. And that's to learn not only about their peers, but about how to navigate within really diverse settings. And that includes everything from, racial and ethnic diversity to gender and sexuality diversity. And so this is not about special interest. This is truly about educating all of our students, not just particular populations of students who have always been served.
It seems as though Ms. Perez-Diaz is implying that we should trust the children and that the parents could probably complicate things. But there's a reason why we call them children and parents adults, because there's a certain wisdom and experience that parents have that children cannot navigate. And sometimes children can be very impressionable, manipulated, and indoctrinated.
I think that takes away a little power.
Let me have Ms. Montgomery respond to that. Ms.
Oh, I
Montgomery?
appreciate that. I think it's interesting because that is definitely something that I was going to say is when we start giving kids all the say in their education, since when did children know exactly what they need to be taught? They don't. They have parents for that. And it's really important that there are adults that are overseeing what is taught to these children. I think that when you take the parents out of it, the parents have been raising these kids and teaching them since they were born. It's important to make sure that they have a voice when it comes to their education. Right now, they're implementing so many things that have nothing to do with academics. And I think that's where a lot of parents are getting very frustrated. We need to get back to basics. These kids need to know how to read, write. They need to learn about history, science, and the arts. We have a serious lack or a delay in learning because of everything that these kids have been through over the last 2 years. It is really important that we concentrate on academics. And I think you're absolutely right when you say that by pandering to every single small group, you're forgetting the majority. And all of these other children, that's a problem. You can teach respect and love for everybody through example, by being a leader. And most teachers do that. But I think that by adding all of these other things into the curriculum and having students vote on it, student members of the board or just members of the community that were appointed by board members and not elected by the county, that's a problem.
I want to give Ms. Perez-Diaz an opportunity to respond to Ms. Montgomery. Ms. Diaz?
Yes, Armstrong. So, I think, and I can actually connect this to what was just said by Ms. Chandler. So, as I was listening to April speak, and she talked about how we need to lead by example. I will say I have to applaud the Frederick County Board of Education. 2 years ago this month, they put out an official statement that I thought was a beautiful statement about unity and representation and diversity. And I'll quote it. It says, "Every child in our school system must feel safe, welcome, and affirmed for exactly who they are in school and in our community." I then think about what changed in that community, because in April of this year, I saw what happened at the school board meeting, and April spoke to leading by example. Well, I think that it's really foolish when we have adults that come and are speaking, first of all, against groups of kids, and I don't care how small the group of kids are. When we're in education, we're not here to submit to the ideas of the majority. We're here to submit to everyone. And so to hear a bunch of adults speaking against particular groups of students and their families who are just looking for some sort of, empathy and some understanding. And then to double speak, right? There was quoting of the Bible, but in the same breath, there was cussing and language. That's not leading by example. So what are those parents teaching their young people about civic engagement? I struggle with that, and I could not have put it more beautifully the way that Ms. Chandler laid it out. I think that when we are addressing all of these social issues, it is important to make sure to have these conversations in settings where there is this sentiment of safety and of security and of an ability to engage in conversations where perhaps we don't understand each other, but at least it's being facilitated by an adult who can monitor how those interactions take place. Let
me give Ms. Montgomery a chance to respond.
Well, I find it interesting because that meeting, if you go back and watch it, it was actually like 5 hours long. I spoke for a matter of 3 minutes, and during those 3 minutes, I did not say any of the things that she just said. There were other parents, but those parents are incredibly frustrated by this point. They've reached out to the local board. They don't get responses. They have tried to figure out what's going on with the curriculum. They don't get answers. They can't find things at a local at the FLAC committee meeting, which is the Family Life and Advisory Committee. They had documents they were looking at that were not uploaded to board docs for parents to see, and they wouldn't let us see it. We have very frustrated parents that are worried about their children. And I think that when we talk badly about those parents that are concerned for their kids and are speaking to other adults, that we should not be judging the parents that way. They've been trying for a very long time to speak amicably, and they're getting nowhere. So we have very frustrated parents, and I will stand up for all of those parents. Most of those parents spoke very eloquently, and they were pleading with the board not to do this.
Ms. Perez-Diaz, you actually believe a child knows who they are at age 4, 5, or 6?
I believe a child feels all kinds of emotions, and
that's not what I asked you. I asked you, do you think they know who they are?
I do. I think that they're going to be exploring all kinds of things, right? But, and I can't speak generally about every child, but yes, I absolutely believe that some children may immediately know who they are.
Well, there are
right?
always exceptions, but what about overall the majority of kids?
Well, I can't speak for the overall majority of the kids because, again, that's not, that's not taking into account all children.
Okay,
right. So
well,
I'm going to come back to you
because I want to keep this brief. Do you believe children know who they are at age 4?
No. My daughter thinks she's a puppy some days. That doesn't mean I'm going to go out and get her hair transplants all over her body. I think it's really important to make sure that we are letting kids be kids. They are innocent. They are figuring it out. And a lot of these issues need to be dealt with at home and not in the curriculum. My 5-year-old doesn't know who she is right now. She thinks she's a princess. She's not going to be a princess.
My daughter is 6 years old, and she knows that she is a beautiful Mexican-American, Cuban-American child. She knows who she is. Good. And that's part of how we're raising
Let me ask you, when do we ever find time to talk about why kids are in the classroom to get an education? How does this prepare kids to be contributing citizens to society when they graduate from high school and go to college? How does it prepare them to pass the STEM, the science, the technology, the engineering, the math? What does it do for their overall academic experience?
I love that question because that's exactly what we're trying to get at is the overall academic experience. When we're talking about an academic experience, we're talking about a whole child, right? You don't segment or decompartmentalize who a person is when they enter into a setting. So this is absolutely critical because this is part of the fabric of who we are as a country and how we engage in different, in different career settings, in different post-secondary education settings, right? In the military, you're going to be dealing with individuals who are academically diverse, who are socially diverse, ethnically diverse. Like it is all intertwined. There is no way to segment all of that out. It is important to talk about all of these things. And again, I am a huge advocate for ensuring that we do it in settings where it's facilitated by an adult in a safe space. And I'll speak very, one of the most heartbreaking things, I'm in Texas. I'm 2 hours away from Uvalde, Texas, right? We talk so much about mental health and making sure that we're addressing all of these needs. How do people not understand that that's not interconnected to issues of identity and race and culture and lived experiences? It's foolish to think that none of that is connected.
Well, have we become overly obsessed with this identity, with these labels, to the detriment of our own children and ultimately our country?
Absolutely not.
I honestly think that children shouldn't be labeled at all. Okay. I think that kids should have the academic fundamentals that they need to be successful, starting with reading and math and writing. If they can't read what you're trying to teach them, then all you're doing is talking about their feelings. And when they get out into the real world to get a job, they're going to have another thing coming. These kids need to be given a proper education that has academic basis. We do not need all of the other stuff that's going on. Honestly, in high school, kids can form clubs with a teacher that can guide them. That is the right place to start looking into more of these things, not in elementary school and in kindergarten where they're still learning how to be away from their parents. And the parents are trusting you. They are trusting every single teacher and every single staff member, which are normally and as a whole, really lovely people that do have their heart in the right place. But when they are made to give this kind of training to these kids, it's conditioning, it's not acceptable, and these children need to be led with academics so that the parents can have that faith in the system. We need to be able to bind the parents and the teachers together again, because when there's no security up high, our children are going to act out. And we're seeing it all over the country, and it's leading to a lot of emotional and mental instability. I'm really sorry that you had to go through what you went through in Texas, and we felt it all across the country. It was brutal, and there's gonna be a lot of recovery work for that.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Ms. Perez-Diaz, I want to thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for what you do. Ms. Montgomery, thank you for being a caring parent and running the show that you care and willing to take a leadership role. Rising criminality and severely low literacy rates are all a consequence of a system that has failed our children. Baltimore is one of the most significant case studies in what can go wrong when we fail our children. It shows us the pipeline from a lousy education to the prison or the streets. Those circumstances are horrible. We must not give up hope. If we can alter the path of our educational institutions, then we can transform our nation for the better. I'm Armstrong Williams.